Oh, hello, and welcome back to the Sage's Library. I am, of course, your erstwhile sage, Trevor Devall. Thank you for joining me here, and a special thank you to my friend Tristram Evans, who recommended that I wear this ridiculous getup. I think it's rather spot on and smashing. Anyway, enough of that. Thanks for joining me here today, once more in the library, in the Sage's Library, where I talk about all of the many, many games that I have played or ran or experienced over the years. Today I have a very special game that I'm very, very excited to talk about because it has a special place in my heart. Oh, how I love this game. And the irony is, I don't think that back in the day when we played this game, we ever actually played it according to the rules, which is hilarious to me. Nonetheless, that game has a long storied history, a lot of controversy as well, sort of. And it also has a spiritual successor that has recently been released into the world, which we'll talk about at the end. But for now, let us begin this episode by talking about one of my favorites, Middle-earth Role-Playing by Iron Crown Enterprises, otherwise known as MERPS to those of us who played it a lot in the day. And play it, oh, we certainly did. This game came out in, I think, 1984, and I found it immediately and fell in love with it immediately. Here's the thing about this game. First of all, the system was very, very different than anything we had seen before. It is sort of a percentile system, but not really. I'll talk about that in a second. The second thing that is of interest about this system is that even though it is a game that is ostensibly designed to represent Middle-earth, it does that exceptionally poorly. Which is hilarious, because for a game that purports itself to be a game set in Middle-earth and to evoke and conjure the feelings of playing in Middle-earth, it's quite awful at doing that. Because the mechanics of the game are basically pretty bog standard high fantasy kind of fare. Middle-earth is not overt in its magic. It's pretty subtle. You don't see wizards walking around blasting lightning bolts at people and, doing all that kind of stuff. But in this game, you do. So is it the right fit for Middle-earth? A lot of people think not. I guess I'd have to objectively say it's probably not a good fit for Middle-earth. And yet, it was back in the early 80s for us. Not only because it was the only game we knew of that existed at the time, whose sole goal was to represent Middle-earth and to play in Middle-earth and put you as a character in Middle-earth where you could play in Middle-earth. That was very exciting to us. But it represented it in its artwork and in its maps. Pete Fenlon was the designer of the maps for Iron Crown Enterprises, who did the Middle-earth maps back in those days, and they were just things of absolute beauty. Immediately immersive. It pulled you into the world. Now, interestingly, this was also set not only in Middle-earth, it was set 1,500 years before the events of The Lord of the Rings. So this game was really, if you had read The Hobbit and thought, oh wow, I'm going to play an RPG that's just like The Hobbit, and you picked up MERPS, you'd be going cross-eyed. What is this? What do you mean this takes place 1,500 years before? There is no Shire at the time. So, this was kind of made for Tolkien enthusiasts, in my opinion. But of course, we were. So we loved it. We loved the idea of playing, Knights of Old Gondor shortly after the plague had struck. And, this is pretty deep in the weeds when it comes to Middle-earth history, but we loved it. The game is a lot of fun. And as I said before, I don't think we ever actually played it right. So let me talk to you a little bit about that. The game is sort of a percentile system. It's a skill-based game, so you have skills that you buy ranks in, and you get skills of, plus 25 to this, plus 30 to that, whatever the case is. You roll percentiles to do with things. Let's see, you want to climb a wall, okay? Well, you do your climbing skill or your athletic skill or whatever it's called. And let's say you have plus 30 to that, okay? So you roll the dice, the D100 dice, and let's say I rolled a 60. Well, 60 plus 30, because that's my skill, is 90. Then I take that number 90 and I consult the chart, in this case, the moving maneuver chart. And that chart tells me what percentage chance I have of succeeding, or what percentage of the thing I'm trying to achieve I do achieve with success. Sounds really lame as I say it, but it worked really well in play. Combat was very similar in that you added your weapon skill, subtracted the defensive skill, basically, of your opponent, rolled the D100, put those numbers together and consulted a chart. And the chart was your weapon type versus their armor type. So if I'm using a broadsword against rigid leather, say, then that's going to give me results on a column. And those results could be nothing done, or it could be a number of hits, which is like hit points. Or it could be hits and a critical. And this was a big thing because critical hits, that was new for us back in the early 80s. The idea that the game engine was really, really centered around this idea of critical hits, which were devastating. Like you slash a guy's artery and now he's bleeding 3 hits around and he's stunned and unable to parry for 2 rounds. Basically, the fight's over. I love gritty games with quick resolution, and this game is that. Now, again, terrible representative of Middle-earth. There's not a lot of examples in the Lord of the Rings of people heroically facing off against a goblin and taking an arrow to the throat and dying of blood loss 3 rounds later because their friends couldn't get to them to patch the wound. Again, doesn't quite feel like Middle-earth, but it's a great game, super fun, and hilariously, I don't think we ever played it right because combat is in phases, right? So you will have various phases go off before other things. So spells go first, then missiles go. So bows and arrows and spears and that kind of thing. Then you have moving maneuvers, like if you're trying to dodge out of the way or climb a wall or something. Then you have melee attacks. Then you have regular movement. And then you have basically everything else. So it's not like a regular D&D game where you roll your initiative plus your dexterity bonus, and that's the order in which you do everything, in a round for the rest of the combat. No. It all depends on what you choose to do. If I'm going to knock and fire an arrow, I'm going to do that before you can swing a sword at me. Unless, of course, you're right in front of me, in which case that's probably going to be an issue. But the idea was that everything happens in phases. Now, that became a little tricky to keep track of, especially if you had a lot of players and a lot of enemies, because, you had to declare what the player was going to do. And if you were the GM, you had to declare what each enemy was going to do. And you had to keep track of where they were and what phase they were going to act in. And obviously, if I declare an attack against you with my sword, but you manage to shoot me with your arrow first, well, now I can't attack you because I'm stunned and unable to parry and bleeding on the ground for 3 hits around, let's say. So everything could change within a round. Just because you declare you want to do a thing doesn't mean you're actually going to get a chance to do it. Fate may intervene. Now, the other thing about the actual dice system was that they had something called an open-ended system, which meant that you rolled 1d100, but if you rolled 96 to 100, that was open-ended, which means you picked up the dice, you roll them again, and you add that number to the number that you just rolled. So if I rolled a 96 and then I rolled a 30, well, that's 96 plus 30 plus my skill bonus. Consult the chart and see what happens. This game was sort of the basic version of a game called Rollmaster. Rollmaster, which was the much more advanced version of MERPS. Rollmaster was sort of derogatively known as Chartmaster or Mathmaster. I'm sure there was other slurs for it over the years. I have it here, of course. Of course, I have it here. Played a lot of Rollmaster in the day too. But MERPS was, for me, where it all began. I love this game, even though we probably never even played it right. I love its presentation. I love the fact that it's a terrible match for Middle-earth. For some reason, that just, I'm looking at the game with nostalgic glasses here. But I would love to run it properly now. That would be so much fun to go back now as an old man who can, wrap his mind around the rules a little bit better than I could when I was in, 7th grade or whatever. I'd love to go back and run this game now and rekindle some of that old magic from the days when we were playing MERPS. There is a spiritual successor that has been released fairly recently called Against the Dark Master. Now, this is basically MERPS, but a little updated, a little streamlined, made to run a little more smoothly. I have not run it. I have it on PDF. I don't have a hard copy. I'd love to get a hard copy. Apparently, they're hard to come by right at this moment. Supply chain issues, apparently. But it looks really promising. Would I play MERPS again, or would I play Against the Dark Master? I don't know. I'd love to play both, frankly. But only so many hours in the day. Now, I don't know if you can still get MERPS anywhere in any form. I suspect you can't. I know it's been long out of print, and this is the first edition. This is the 1984 edition. It's been long out of print, and if anyone knows where you can legitimately get a copy of this, do let me know in the comments below. I'd just be curious to see if anyone has that. Or, for those of you who have played this game, and if you know about this game, and if you had experiences with this game, by all means, let me know in the comments below too. One of my favorite experiences in this game was just me and the DM, just the two of us. My friend Ian, who was running this game that was set just outside of Bree, I believe, and I was playing some ranger or something, and I got in this running bow battle with this orc in the woods where we were stalking and counter-stalking each other, and these rules just made that sing. It was so great. I love this game. I love the memories of it, and I'd like to make more memories of it, but alas, there are so many games to play and not enough years in one man's life. Anyway, if you enjoy the content, please do hit like and subscribe, and we will see you next time when I review or talk about another game here in the Sage's Library.